Hi, I'm Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode number 389. I'm so happy that you're joining me here today. So, there are certain things in business that we expect to compound, things like capital and relationships and experience. But what if there's something else that has been compounding quietly in the background for a little while? So, my guest today is Tim Woodbridge, and Tim started his career as a registered nurse. Today, he's the founder and acquisitions lead visionary at WCG, where he and his partner have grown a portfolio of mobile home communities across the United States. And Tim brings this to the conversation: resilience compounds faster than capital. Now, you might hear this and think that that resilience means just getting tougher, working harder, or caring more. But as you listen to Tim, you may begin to notice that it means something different. Resilience for him has been built through hearing no, through deals that did not work the way he expected, through learning what he can control and releasing what he cannot, through realizing that the answer to growth is not always adding more to yourself. Sometimes it is in finding people who are better than you at the things that you no longer need to own. There's a moment in this conversation where Tim tells me that his team closes about 1 out of every 19 offers. And when I say that perhaps the goal is to improve that number, his response stopped me. He essentially said, "I'm not hearing no enough." Think about that for a moment, because maybe there's something happening when a no stops feeling like a rejection and starts becoming part of the process. Maybe the accumulation of those experiences creates something that money alone can't buy. And the confidence that when something goes wrong, you and your team around you will figure out what comes next together. So let's dive into my conversation with Tim Woodbridge. Tim Woodbridge, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I look forward to the conversation.
So do I. So do I. Well, you shared a really interesting and used paper napkin, not fully used, but like weathered paper napkin, and it says resilience compounds faster than capital. Love that. Why did you share that with me?
Well, I go back and I think about when I first started, and I remember thinking, well, I'm a nurse, and I wasn't raised in the smartest way of, holding on to money and saving money. So I didn't have any really. I had a little bit saved, but nothing crazy, nothing that could have made a big difference. Um, and what I did is I figured out how I can move forward with my limited resources. And I mean, I do that still today. It's not, there's only one way to do it. It's how can we do it? Every time I hear no, I think, how can I do that? And so it's the resilience in the face of all the no's that I have heard and still hear, and figuring out, okay, but how? I want to buy all these mobile home parks. I'm very bullish on the asset class. I really see the need for affordable housing. So how can we do that?
So, find that really interesting. So let's contrast that a little bit with where you started off. You talked about how a lot. How is that different than your, professional training? You said you didn't have great training on savings, but you had great training in nursing care. I mean, there's a lot going into that. So how is the training differently than maybe what you were trained there, or was it aligned? I'm just curious.
I'd say it's aligned. I mean, all the nurses that I have, just about all of them that I've ever worked with, it's like, how do we do what we need to do with the supplies that we have here? Because, in school, it's, yeah, you do exactly this. This is the procedure, and it's cut and dry. but in reality, it's not so much. A lot of times you got to figure out, okay, how do we do this with what we have? And yeah, very much I've taken that idea and just applied it here because there's never going to be a perfect scenario. There's never going to be that deal that you do that has nothing bad happen. It's like, okay, like once you realize that every deal is going to have something that goes a little bit sideways and you do your best to make it so you minimize all those events, there's still black swan events, there's still things that happen. Once you accept that as just how things are, it's just part of the process, part of you getting better, then I don't worry about that anymore. I don't think about what if. I'm confident that when the what ifs happen, that I and my team today will figure it out.
Yeah, first of all, you're not trying. It sounds like what you've learned along the way, and maybe you got this in nursing first, but what you've learned along the way is not to eliminate the what ifs, but to be prepared to adjust in the space of them, in the face of them, in when and if they do occur. And that's the language that you sort of used, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I'd even go back even further. I mean, I remember growing up, my dad always said, "Hey, if there's someone else who's doing it, then you can do it too. It might be harder for you, you might have to work more, but if they can do it, you can do it." So it's very much you know, okay, how can we figure this out? Because again, if someone else can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah. No, I get that. So tell me about this. You're one day you're working in a clinic, or were you working in a clinic or hospital, or
Hospital.
so you're working in a hospital one day, and you're driving to work and you go, I'm gonna go and invest in mobile home parks. So how did that happen? Like, where did tell me about the journey. That must have been one heck of a car ride.
So it was over a longer period of time, right? So I was a nurse, and I remember being in school, it was very much, I can't wait till I am a nurse, and then, I'll have all this money and I'll have all this whatever, like that's going to be the life. And then I got there and it was great. And my mindset got to very much like, okay, is this it? Not that it's bad, but I realize about myself now that I am really excited about moving forward, about working towards things. It's not everyone, and that's okay. That's just me. And anyway, so yeah, I got to the point where I was just not as satisfied with my life as I thought I was going to be. And fast forward a little bit, I moved to South Carolina. I was in Arizona. I moved to South Carolina where my brother and his wife were living, just for like kind of a fresh start. And I started reading again. I've gone through periods in my life where I read more and where I don't. Um, and so, I was in a new place. I started reading more. And then, yeah, I think it was just probably an Audible recommendation that's like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm like, oh, I've seen this and, in checkout lines and Targets and Walmarts and stuff like that in the past. Why not? That sounds interesting. And I had no idea what to expect, and read it, and it just blew my mind because assets and liabilities, and this is how the rich do it. I was like, oh, okay, like I get the high level how it's done. Now let me deep dive, and from there, reading more books about real estate and listening to podcasts and Bigger Pockets, and it was the same thing. It wasn't a, hey, yeah, I'm gonna just go into mobile home parks. That's gonna be it. It was, let me see what sounds interesting to me. And finally, on Bigger Pockets, Frank Rolfe was on it, and he was talking to Brandon Turner about why he likes mobile home parks. and it just kind of snapped. It grabbed me. I said, "Oh, okay." Like, lower expense ratio, sticky tenants, like that. I like it, and it's a little bit different. Everyone else is doing wholesaling or they're doing whatever, multifamily. This is different. So I kind of like that. I resonated with it. I didn't know where it was going to take me, other than I knew if I pursued it, I would be in a better place, a place that I wanted to be, rather than not doing it.
So, I love that you said that it grabbed you, right? That it jumped out at you and it grabbed you, and you followed that excitement. Is that something that was out of character for you, or is that also one of your father's lessons along the way? He said, "If someone else is doing it, you can do it too," but you followed your excitement. And a lot of people in that same circumstance, and I know you probably know some of those people who will get excited about something and then quickly talk themselves out of it. But this one, you've got excited about it and you took some steps, and now you've taken a bunch of steps. But I'm really curious about the first few, because those are the hard ones for a lot of people, especially you spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money becoming a nurse, and now you're going to go into mobile homes. I mean, some people get into nursing to get out of the mobile homes. You went the other way
Yeah,
around.
yeah, yeah. Me, actually. After my parents split when I was a kid, my mom went and bought a double wide in Southern California, and so yeah, I definitely lived in a mobile home park for a lot of my teenage years. Funny you should say, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a very much, I think all of it culminates together, right? Because I'm a let's do it and figure it out. And if it doesn't work, I still have a nursing license today. I still had, I was still working as a nurse then. It's not like I was like, I'm going to quit this job and go full into it. I said, okay, let me figure out how to do this. I work like, I was thinking I was 3.5, 4 days a week I was working and I had 3 off. So I'm like, okay, I think I can fit this in. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, nothing like that. So I had time, but I mean, even if I was married and had kids and all this stuff, I know I have partners who do the same. It's like there's all these things that people limit themselves. Oh, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. Other nurses that I worked with said, "Oh, I'd love to do that, but I don't. I'm too afraid to do that because I don't want my kids to starve." And I was like, "Your kids are never going to starve. You're resilient. You'll figure it out." But like, the idea of I can't do this because it really just stops people in their tracks. And it's like, well, yeah, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Um, I still, I'm curious about this. You finding your excitement, you getting excited about it, and following that high excitement, that high vibration energy. I think that's really cool. Um, but you used your word. You used your word in your napkin, resilience, just there, and you're resilient. You'll figure it out. That was your comment to a colleague when they were talking themselves out of something. So let me follow that train a little bit. Your comment is that resilience compounds faster than capital. I think a lot of people understand compound interest and think about compound interest as being the sure path to a hockey stick of growth. 1% compounded over time looks like a hockey stick. In your case, what you're saying is resilience works the same way. But how do we grow resilience? How did you grow your resilience? How did that start for you?
That's an interesting question, man. Um, I mean, sometimes I think, I've heard about people having genes for risk taking. And I think that is uh, partially it for me. And, partially it's the upbringing, and the like, okay, let's figure it out as we go sort of thing. Um, and I think, looking back, so yes, the excitement got me in the door of like wanting to explore, but it didn't keep me there because excitement doesn't last. Excitement will get you to do some more digging, but anyone can talk themselves out of things. I think excitement got me in the door, and then just curiosity kept me coming back. And it's like, instead of being focused on what's the worst that's going to happen, I was focused on, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know if I follow this path, it will lead me to where I'm looking to go. And there's no like, oh, by this date, I'm going to have this many millions assets under management and so on and so forth. I'm not good like that. My brain's very high level thinking. And so it was just, I know I'm going to be better if I do this and figure it out. And even if it was a total bust, I would be better learning and growing in that direction. So, don't think excitement's going to keep you coming back. I think having that higher level, this is where I want to be, this is where I am today, and I want to be, more in this direction. That's what kept me coming back.
So two things. Curiosity kept me coming back, right? So excitement got you in the door. It didn't keep you there. And you said curiosity kept me coming back. What was the first moment that you noticed that you were increasingly curious about it? Because sometimes, you open the door, you peek inside, and what you see doesn't intrigue you. Sometimes it doesn't intrigue you. People talk about this with TV shows, right? They'll say, oh, season one's a little slow in the first couple episodes, but then it really gets going, right? And
Yeah.
they talk about that, but it sounded like the way you described this is that it didn't start slow. Maybe it starts slower than it is now, but you got curious early. Again, what did that look like for you? How did you know to follow that?
So it was more, okay, like if I can do this and figure out how to do this, that will lead to the next and the next and the next. Um and it was just my curiosity at first was more like, how do I do this? What are the levers I can pull to really make this perform? And so my first mobile home park, when I bought it, had 10 of 36 lots occupied. So I didn't know exactly what to do other than, okay, I know I need to increase the occupancy in this because I've read books and I know that real estate is based on NOI. Commercial real estate is based on NOI. And so I need to increase the occupancy, get more people paying, and that'll increase the value. I don't know all the ins and outs of cap rates or anything like that at that point. I just know that's what I have to do. And so, and I do this to today. It's get curious on one thing, right? So, okay, I have to increase the occupancy. How can I do that? And that led me to, when COVID hit and Legacy Homes said we'll finance 100% of these homes to park owners who have vacancy. That led, my partner and I, okay, perfect. Let's buy 7 of these homes and then get them occupied. And that's how we start to increase the occupancy. And today, my curiosity it's bigger, but it's still like very similar. So, okay, what are the things that we need in the business? And right now it's very marketing, in terms of marketing to accredited investors who could resonate with the offerings we have. So it's like, that's the thing. How do we find more people who can resonate with that? And then I allow myself to kind of go down rabbit holes and have conversations and do some research. And thank God now we've got Claude and ChatGPT, where I can kind of put a lot of that stuff and spit everything out that I find and then come up with like a game plan. But it's very much, that's okay. We're good with acquisitions. We're good with operations. We need, to find more people, don't do more marketing for these people. So, okay, I'll go find that stuff. But yeah, it's just, what does the business need? Back then it was occupancy. Today it's marketing for accredited investors. Let's do that. And, a lot of the things I do it doesn't work, and that's okay. In the same way, I'm lead acquisitions for our company as well. And all the times I hear no, it's like, okay, but how? Like, and then, I did a deep dive on our numbers recently, and we're only getting closing 1 in 19 deals that we put offers out to. So it's working through the no's. It's not saying, okay, well, this was a no. I guess I'm just going to pack it up. It's a, okay, but how? And just, yeah, just failing forward, I think.
Yeah. You know, you said it very flippantly. Um, that you've only closed one in every 19 deals that you work on, right? And you're if you're just listening to this conversation, uh, you won't have seen it, but Tim smiled when I said you only close one out of 19. It's better than 5%. And I recently did a talk about this, that in business people call that a low batting average or a low hitting rate. But there are some sports where 5% hit rate, that's a great hit rate. That's a great way to go. And and if you can close one in 19, maybe you can close one in 18. Maybe you
Yeah.
can close one in 15 next year. Maybe then it becomes one in 10. And it feels like that's the way you look at things. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong, but what I would say is instead of wanting to close 1 in 15 or 1 in 10, uh, just put out more offers, right? So that's what I can control. I can't control what people say yes or no to, but I can control how many offers we're putting out. So I see that number and I'm like, man, I'm not hearing no enough. I want to do 1 in 50 and like have it, but like so many offers are going out that it makes sense like that. So it's again, what can I control? I can control how many offers I'm sending out. Um, but yeah, I guess I bring up that number to be like, look, you're gonna hear no and you're gonna fail, but there's no way around that. Like the hearing the no, looking dumb, and all that stuff. It's part of the process, and it's the only way that you get better. There's no, I like to say, there's no substitute for doing the work.
So the let's go back in time a little bit. You're you move to South Carolina, you start reading some books, fall into podcasts, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then find your way to mobile homes, find your way back to mobile homes, maybe, and parks, and start to believe in the value proposition, maybe because you're a product of that value proposition a little bit, and then decide to go after it. And you said you had no cash, right? You said you didn't have the
Sure.
savings that were required um, to have made this an easier pathway. So, what's your thought process? You look at your bank account, you look at the first deal, and I know a little bit about how these deals work, but then you find one where the ingredients match, and it has 10 out of 36 lots occupied, which is part of the reason why you were able to make the deal. So, the how did that deal framework not only how did you fall upon that deal framework, but more importantly, how have you evolved that framework, because now you're dealing with different economic realities, especially as you're dealing with other people's money coming in as accredited investors?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am happy that I did simpler deals back then. So like joint ventures, that first one is me and a partner. He put up 25K, I put up $6,200 for closing costs. Um, so, it was a lot smaller. But it allowed me to figure things out. And I mean, with all those homes we brought in that first year, a lot of the setup costs were going on like my personal credit card. And I was figuring out how to do stuff, juggling things, um, things that I would never do with, someone else's money. I mean, this is a JV partner. We're in the deal together 50-50. I'm doing the work, right? Um, but yeah, so same, I put my money up for a lot of those things and I figured it out. And then, I did a decent amount of deals before we started I met my partners now and we started raising capital. So really wanted to make sure, okay, like Yeah, there's always gonna be something that happens that, deals go sideways, but how do we mitigate that risk as much as possible? And, it was 4 years of running parks before, we raised a dollar from any, had any kind of syndication, and passive investors. Uh, so yeah, that was a big thing, and now, so working with my partners, working with Matthias, who, like, I'm the high level guy, he's the operator and, like, details and numbers guy, and so, like, looking at, okay, here's my experience, he was the one who put together the underwriting and the business plan, and I could look at it and be like, "Yeah, that is a reasonable business plan." I didn't think, "Oh, yeah, that everything's gonna go 100%," but it's like, that is very reasonable to think we can do that, and then we beat it, we're he and I are both very conservative in terms of, we don't want to try to promise things that can't relatively reasonably happen because we like to sleep at night. Um, but yeah, so that was what changed. That's what allowed me to start actually accepting investor capital and raising money, because I had someone who was much better at business planning and operations than I was.
One of the things that you said, um, interesting there, and you really just sort of distinguish it really quickly, is that, to you, it doesn't sound like resilience is getting good at putting more pressure on yourself to do the same juggling or crappy stuff we do or scrappy stuff that we do when we're starting a business. You were very careful to say you left those things behind as you started to deal with other people's money, syndication, and bigger deals. And I think that's really an important thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs misunderstand resilience with the capacity just to deal with more pressure and noise. They misunderstand and misapply that by applying more pressure on the same stuff, we can move further. And it sounds like intuitively you've understood that otherwise, that you've changed your approach. Am I wrong in hearing that?
You're not wrong. More pressure, in my experience, just makes me do worse and less. And yeah, it's very much, finding who is better at the things. So when I was younger, I always resonated with the story. I think it was Henry Ford, and Henry Ford was being, um, they're like a Senate hearing committee or something like that. Um, and someone was saying like, "How could you do this? How can you not know every little piece of your business?" And he said, "Look, like I have these buttons I can push. And if I don't know, I hit the button and someone who knows comes in and explains it to me." And so I love that. I love the idea of being around people who are really great at what they do. And like I don't have to be great at what my partners do. I know that they are great at what they do, and I'm great at the couple things that I do really well. And it's so important. If I was trying to do Matthias's job or Vinny's job, then I wouldn't have the bandwidth to do my job well. And so, yeah, for anyone who's okay, if I just work harder, it's like that's not the answer, man. You got to work smarter. Everyone has the same amount of time in their day, so why push more pressure? Like we all thrive with a good amount of pressure, right? So it's not that there's none, there's always something going on, but there's nothing that anyone on my team is like, my gosh, this is crazy. And it's funny. I think I've had tenants be like, "This isn't an emergency," and I'm always like, the nurse in me is like, "Is anyone's heart stopped? Is anyone not breathing? Because if not, we'll take care of it. But it's not the kind of emergency you think. We'll get it done, but we'll get it done in chickens with their heads cut off, as it were."
I love that button story, but your most recent comment about your nursing life, and when people talk about the word emergency, one of the things that jumps up for me right away is the best out of office message I've ever seen in my life. and I've always aspired to have one like this. But it says, "Thanks for reaching me. I'm away from the office. If this is an emergency, call 911. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I'll see
yeah,
you in 2 weeks."
yeah.
And I thought that was so powerful.
It totally, and it's a lot of life and a lot of my life, especially today, and back then, is setting expectations. It's like, hey, I get it. I hear you. It will be taken care of, but it's not the same emergency. Like it's not what you think it is. It's not as bad as you think it is. So let's all discuss this and kind of say, I hear you. I know that you're worried. This is how we're going to take care of it.
Yeah, I hear that. Um, so what's the next phase for you? What's your next area of curiosity? What are you thinking about?
I'm very obsessed with how we grow this business. And so my current curiosity is the one I've had for a while. Hey, how do we buy a lot more mobile home parks? Because I'm super bullish on the asset. I know it's going to increase in value. I know that there's a whole big need of these rundown trailer parks, as it were. How do we buy these and make them a little bit better? And so we can make money for our investors, for ourselves, and make these communities better because there's such a big need for affordable housing. And there's so many people who talk about the need without having any solution. So, yeah, I'm very, how do we solve this problem on a very, very big level?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. Um, I have a sort of a deeper idea that we are our best when we are for others what we need the most, right? And you talked about how, you know, you grew up in a double wide earlier in your life, and and you talked about it like you almost sort of talked about it fondly. You talked about it like it was a nice time, and I think that people have. They have everybody walks around with a projector. We see the world as we are, not as it is. And you saw the world as you are, and you saw this as being a viable opportunity for people to have affordable housing, a wonderful place to grow or start and grow or continue a family life. And you experienced that, and you want to be a part of that solution. And with all the revolution that we're hearing about tiny homes and all of these other opportunities around, I find it interesting that you're going back to what brought you here, right? And making that available. You know, what what are we missing in that movement that you think that, not just mobile homes, but environments where affordable homes can be brought together? What do you see happen in the communities that you're helping build?
Yeah, I don't think you're anything's being missed. I think the answer is there, and mobile home parks or like a land home package where you get a piece of land, you put a double wide on, you detail it, you sell it as real estate. The fundamental is people need a more affordable place to live that isn't a crappy place to be, Like everyone deserves a nice community. Um, so yeah, what we're doing, we're coming in, we're buying these parks, we are doing some upgrades. A lot of time we're, paving roads that used to be dirt. And yeah, we're figuring out how to make it slightly nicer. I mean, we're not taking it and making it into something unrecognizable. It a sudden you're taking a C class mobile home park into A class because that requires enough capital where you'd have to really go up on the rent substantially to make the business plan work. So it's a balancing act, right? It's okay, how do we make this nicer while still maintaining it as an affordable place to live for the residents? And yeah, there there's not like revolutionary things. I think everyone's looking for, or a lot of people are looking for something. Oh my gosh, this is the next big thing. This is going to change the face of things. It's like, not always, right? This is the way that works really, really well. And let's focus on this. And if there's something, that comes along that is different or better, then let's do that. But for now, this is the best way that we've found that works. And they've been doing mobile home parks for decades and decades and decades. So how can we take this model and make it a little bit better so everyone wins?
Yeah, it's a really strong sense of purpose. So I wonder if we could then take that purpose and push it back against that resiliency moment where, maybe you could talk about one specific deal that blew up or lost money and what resilience looked like in that moment. And did purpose play a role? Did that vision play a role? How did you get through that? Talk about one specific one in as much detail as you can share.
Sure. So thankfully I haven't lost capital on a deal. Um, and I have, so I've lost time, right? So this is my second deal, and I had a friend who had a friend, and they owned this park in Florence, South Carolina. I was living in Charleston. And so, 2 hours away, they owned it. They were in New York and whatnot. So they're all out of state investors, and they're not getting the business plan to work. Um, and so my friend and I, we bought into this deal. So other partners left and they took a haircut before we got into it. But we bought their shares for, I don't know, probably less than they paid. I, I don't know all the ins and outs of that because that was before me, but I know, we paid a little bit. And I thought, hey, I did so well on my first park with, just a little bit of sweat or a lot of bit of sweat and figuring stuff out. I can totally do that in this park. And, that one's 33 pads. I think there was only like 5 paying tenants there when we took over, but there was, 19 or so homes that were just left there. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. We can take these homes over. We can, get tenants in them, sell them as handyman specials, even though they're POS homes and no one wants them. I was like, this is going to be so good. We're going to do so great. And what ended up happening is it limped along for a couple of years. It was, okay, let's figure this out. And everything we had, hit, uh, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. Okay. Yeah. We'll get, uh, I remember, we sold or we gave all these homes away, to a mobile home investor thinking, hey, we'll give these to you. You find investors who can put money into these, and then we can get good paying tenants. Everyone can win together, and it'll be amazing. And what ended up happening is this guy got the lowest common denominator people in who just wanted to live for almost nothing, who didn't want to fix up the homes, who didn't want to pay lot rent and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, like, I thought this was going to be good. I thought this was going to be an easier, better way to do it, but it ended up being a bad way because this guy just got, 1,500 to 2,500 bucks per person. We saw none of that money, which is fine, but they didn't pay us really lot rent long term. So yeah, I mean, a lot of me going to eviction court and figuring out, okay, well, we got to get these people out and so on and so forth. And, 2 years or so later, uh, we ended up selling for what we had in it. So, again, no one lost money. Uh, but yeah, it's just wasted time. But if I look back, yeah, it's not wasted because I learned what not to do.
Right.
I'm never going to go into a deal where we don't have money put aside to execute the business plan. And sometimes I have to learn things the hard way, and I did. And I'm glad about it. But yeah, that's the worst one. And there's a 2 deals right now that we have, at the level of where they should be. Uh, we had the business plan, and it's not losing money. It's just not as doing as well as we had projected. And the second deal, same thing, is not losing money. It's just not doing as well. And so we're, taking saying, okay, these ones we need to pay special attention to get them up to the standard that we operate in. But it happens, man. Especially you do this for a little bit, you're gonna have deals that aren't hitting projections. And what we do is we have built-in backstops to make sure that our investors are still getting their preferred return payments. So like on on one of them it was a JV deal, so there's no investors involved. So like that's easier. It's more like, okay, no one's getting paid and that's fine. Let's just figure this out. The second one, yes, we raised capital on it. What did we do? Okay, it's not up to snuff. It's not to where we want it to be, but instead of having the investors suffer, we said, no, no, we don't need to get paid on this. We don't need our asset management fee right now. Let's turn that off, make sure that the investors are still getting their preferred return payments, and really roll up our sleeves and get this stuff in order. And it took probably a good 6 months to get there. But yeah, we're back to projections on where we wanted to be. And you just figure it out. We very much come from like a holistic mindset, right? It's all about the deal. It's not what's Tim making at the end of the day on this. It's like, do I need to turn this off? Do I need to tighten my belt? Okay, let's do that because it's all for the health of the deal and the health of our investors. We very much are minded. We want people to keep coming back, so we treat them very, very well.
One of the things I'm struck by is that, I spend a lot of time on large M&A and business transactions. And one of the things that a lot of people forget, they get really wrapped up in how smart they are and how cute they can make the terms and conditions of an agreement. And really, they end up forgetting that it is an agreement amongst people. And the people part of it is super important. And a long time ago, I learned a lesson that the shorter the agreement, the better the people have to
Yeah,
be, because you hold
yeah.
yourself to a higher standard. And the longer the agreement, the more people try to be cute after the agreement is signed. It's not the same people, but it's just a natural tendency of the deal. And I just thought it's interesting the way you frame that in a slightly different way. I had another question going backwards again about resilience. You talked about resilience as, genes for risk taking, and maybe you have genes for risk taking, but can you transfer resilience to your team, or is it personal or innate? And if you do, how do you do that? How do you coach them to compound their resilience over time?
Uh, so what I like to do is I am very big on mm, being okay with not knowing everything, and I don't want to know everything. And so, like, I will be the first to admit that I have no idea. And when people ask on the team, "What are we gonna do?" and I'm like, I don't know, to be honest. I know that we'll figure it out together, but let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out. I know a lot of stuff from experience, but I certainly don't know everything. So yeah, a lot of it is on our team. We we are okay to fail, and we will never give each other a hard time about, oh, this didn't work. It's like, oh, okay, well, now we know how that didn't work. It's what is it, Thomas Edison's way of, he did 1,000 tests or whatever to get the light bulb, and he knows he did 999 experiments on how to not make a light bulb. So that's how we do things. It's there's no giving anyone a hard time or any repercussions for taking a leap and it not working. That's actually congratulated by us. We got our in-house property management company with workers and whatnot, and you know it has taken uh, at least 6 months or the better part of almost a year, I'd say, of just being like, I don't know. Like, I know that we pay you guys, but there's so much I don't know. You tell me what you think and let's figure this out. And if it's wrong, okay, well, again, we figured out a way how not to do it. So let's do it better next time. And all these failing forward, that's kind of a big lesson that I've learned. It's everything's about failing forward. Everything's about figuring out what not to do and trial and error.
Yeah, I love that. Um, so, uh, grateful for you joining me here, Tim. And this is a point of the show where we do a shout out to an old guest. He was on the show more than a decade ago initially, and he gave us a great napkin. What you appreciate appreciates. When you appreciate people, when you um, appreciate what they do and for you and for the world, they appreciate and value for everyone around them. His name was John Rulin, and he suddenly passed away coming up about 2 years ago. And ever since that time, we've been paying forward his gift to us by asking every single person on our show to shout out someone that they are grateful for. Who would you like to shout out today?
My wife, first of all, I'd shout out because she's amazing. She supports. She's yeah, she's such a great supporter. She's such a great cheerleader. It's oh my gosh, I am so grateful for her. And then the second, because why stop at one, right? I'm very grateful for my partner Matthias. Um, yeah, when we started working together, he kind of took this big idea of mine and has made it into a reality. And, you know, the people I get to work with today, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed. I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful that I can surround myself with amazing people. So yeah, it's it's so interesting because yeah, exactly like you're saying, like what are you grateful for today? Who are you grateful for? Because I I think the difference for me was when I could take that step back and be like, "Oh, this isn't a me game. This is a we game. How are we all winning together?" And with that, I've been able to go so much farther than I could ever go alone.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Thanks for joining me, Tim.
Thank you so much.
There's a line from this conversation that I just keep on coming back to. I'm not hearing no enough. Because there's something very different about the person who is trying to avoid rejection and the person who has learned that rejection is just simply part of moving forward. And maybe as you think about Tim's napkin, you can begin to recognize where resilience has already been compounding in your own life. Maybe the plan didn't work, the deal fell apart, and the thing that you were certain would be easier turned out to be much more challenging. And somehow you figured out what came next. Tim also makes an important distinction in this conversation. Resilience does not mean becoming capable of carrying more and more and more pressure. Sometimes it means building differently, finding people who are stronger when you are weaker, and being willing to say, I don't know. Letting an experiment fail without turning the failure into a verdict about the person who tried it, and continuing to ask the question that seems to have followed Tim from nursing to entrepreneurship. How can we do it? How can we solve this? The question feels different. Can we then it feels different than can we do it? One looks for a verdict, the other begins looking for a way, a path. And perhaps that's where Tim's napkin becomes something a little bit more worth carrying. Resilience compounds faster than capital, not because adversity automatically makes us stronger, but because every experience can teach us something about what to change, who to trust, what to release, and what we're capable of meeting next. Tim finished this conversation talking about something else I loved. This isn't a me game, this is a we game. And maybe that's where resilience compounds fastest of all, when we stop believing we have to build it alone. We have to solve it alone. Thank you, Tim Woodbridge, for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you for spending this time with me on Paper Napkin Wisdom. Until next time, keep thinking big, starting small, and sharing your wisdom. Make it a great day. I believe in you.